welcome to Psychic Holistic Spotlight. I'm your host, Josie Way, and tonight with me, co-hosting is Bill Hannon, and our guest is our friend. He's been here before. If you recognize the face, it is Joe Higgins, and he's a busy little bee. He's writing another book, and it's almost done. It should be done by the time this show gets on the air. Its title is
Always Connected for People That Have Lost Children. Children give insights and signs from heaven.
Yes, yes.
It's only taken 6 years to write it, so it better be done in the next couple of weeks.
Right.
Well, if not, you get lots of stories from people who will write you letters and say, "Oh, I wish you put this story in the book."
Listen, there's always another book.
Yes.
That's right.
So
That's how it started, didn't it?
Yeah, I started getting
With letters.
It started with signs that people used to get, and people used to send me their sign stories, and that's when I started writing the first book. But I thought it was important, especially with this book and with this whole serious matter of people losing children, that we add those sign stories because it validates that they're still here. So I've collected a lot of sign stories from parents and other people who have lost children, and how their kids show up. And kids are great when they come through. They're very joyous. They're very practical jokers. They do the whole thing.
Yeah, they're not serious and depressed like a lot of some of them were, and very introverted and fearful.
Right. Well, they were just basically going through different situations that was molding their character and whatnot,
and
they never had a chance to fully develop their character.
And when we talk about children too, it goes, it can be from miscarriages all the way up to, they could be 50 years old, because if their mom and dad are still in their 80s and stuff, there's still that bond of the parent and the child. But it's not just for parents; it's also for other people that when there's a loss of a child, it affects not just the biological parent, it can affect a school teacher, or maybe someone's soccer coach, or siblings, or the community.
Siblings, that's a very good.
And a lot of times, a lot of people don't realize that these people are also going through the grief process and trying to figure out the whys and what happened, how come, you know what I mean? Or grandparents, anyone that had a relationship with that child as they were growing up. Will feel that loss.
Right.
Even in the community, I know with my son, they had an assembly at the school because it was drug related, and they wanted the whole school to know. And he was very popular with the school. They didn't know he was very depressed.
I see.
So that's the reason I started off with parents who have lost children, and I took the parents out, and I put for people that have lost children, because I don't want those people to be forgotten.
That's right.
Because a lot of times they grieve in silence because, well, I'm not a parent, but they don't have to be, because if you interact with that child, you're still going to be.
There's still a relationship there.
This relationship, that bond is still there, and they have to be allowed to.
And it's easy to connect with children. It's.
Yeah. Oh, very easily. I mean, that's why I said, everyone has a special teacher or a coach that helped them at some point in their life, or maybe it was a nurse, depending on the age of the passing, or because it's.
Or if they had a chronic illness, that would connect them with a nurse or a doctor.
Yep, counselors, anything, anyone. So, when it comes to children, it's a little bit more sensitive than adults, because we have this linear thought about when a child passes, they'll miss all these milestones and all the opportunities.
Right.
And what happens is, what they tell me, what we came up in the book was, we have to understand that the child is an individual soul that comes here with their own purposes.
Okay.
So we see the physical child being born, needs help from the outside world, the community, the parents, and then it grows through maturity and stuff. But that's not the case on the soul level. A soul level, a child might come just for a few lessons, and then they're going to return from where they came, which is their natural state, which we're spiritual beings.
Right.
And I think once people understand that, it takes away that birth and death, that cut and dry, because life is ongoing.
Yes.
And it just happens that the birth and the death on this physical plane is what we can see, and we can touch it and we can interact with it. But we have to realize that we're spiritual beings, so there's more to it. It's more complex than just, if someone had passed at 15, it's like, oh, all that waste,
Right.
Yeah.
That's right.
because they might have come here with a bigger plan to affect more people.
Well, yeah, I don't think we leave by accident.
Right. There's no wasted life.
No. When you go, you understand that was your contract or your intent to do what you've done.
Right.
To interact with the people that you've interacted with, to have that relationship that helped them grow.
Yes.
Or resolve issues.
And a lot of times we talk about soul plans, but also there's another aspect, it's called life plans. Okay, a soul plan are like the big goals you want to achieve when you come to this life. But what a life plan is kind of learning on the go. It's free will. So you can change certain opportunities of growth while you're here.
Right.
And some you can't.
No, life plans you can change, but you can't change the soul ones.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So those life plans will be, let's say someone wants to learn more about compassion. Those life plans can say, I can learn it by, working with the sick and the elderly. I can learn possibly by me being sick and elderly and someone helping me or something. So they have life opportunities they'll come across.
Right.
So they can change certain things, as long as it fits into the bigger picture. And I think a lot of times what happens is a lot of these life plans can kind of go off in different directions, and then the whole aspect of leaving can change. And we want to talk about exit points.
Yes.
That we all have certain exit points in our life where once we've completed a majority of our soul obligations, we might say, okay, it's time to go now. I'll go earlier, because if I stay, I'm going to cause more pain and suffering. That's not necessary. There's no lesson to be learned to create that pain and suffering. So I'm going to take this exit point. And everyone usually has like 2 or 3 exit points at some point in their life where if they need to, they can cross back over to where they originally came from.
Right.
So once we get into that free will, learning on the go, as I call it, the life plan, those exit points will become more flexible. Depending on what opportunities we step into that we want to be involved in, we can adjust those exit points and leave. So people say, why now? And that's one of the exit points the child might have taken because they have already completed a lot of their major soul things, and it is now. And if they had waited and gone later, it might cause more suffering and pain. And that's what I've been told through the guides, but I've also been told that through a reading I gave to a young girl, the parents of a young girl who passed down in Florida. And she was 11 years old. She came through. She was really wise. She was ahead of her time. She had a great sense of humor. She always wore a boa when she came through. Her parents said she loved it. She loved the pink boas, what I mean? So I said, it was great. But she had taken an early exit point. And the reason that she had taken it was, she said, I wouldn't have lived that long. So I told her parents she wouldn't have lived that long. And she showed me a road, and then the end of the road was very short. And she showed me one exit ramp and then another exit ramp.
But they were both short?
It was so descriptive in my mind. So she said, I took the first one, Joe, and she had passed an ATV accident. And there was like a Memorial Day party, and she was out riding and stuff, and it was a sudden passing. She said, if I took the next one, I would have put my parents through a lot of pain and suffering, a lot more. It would have been years of suffering. And so she goes, I decided to take this one. She goes, I wouldn't have lived that long, because right after the second exit, her life just stopped, the road stopped. And I said to the parents, I said, I don't think she would have lived past 20. I said, from what they're showing me, I don't think she would have lived past 20. Well, it turns out that Carla was her name, she suffered from a rare blood disease. And she wasn't going to make it to her 20s.
I see.
And what would have happened as she got closer to the end, she would have been hospitalized.
A lot.
And the parents would have been for years. A lot of pain and suffering for her and for the parents.
Yeah.
which was great validation because I didn't know about that when I gave this information. So
Right.
afterwards, I was like, oh, this is perfect because Carla showed me why.
Right.
They told me on this side what was going on.
They validated
They
it.
validated so we
Right.
could put that together, and it was a great way to show me and teach me about exit points.
Right.
You know, and one of the things they came through the guides and saying was the reason they take the exit points is they don't want to cause that extra pain and suffering that can last, and it's not necessary. So, so they kind of like decided, I'll take my plane ticket home now. You know what I mean? We all come with a round trip tickets.
Right. That's
Yeah.
right. That's right.
The only thing-
It's
one of
always
the-
We
around.
can switch, when we want to come back.
One of the few guaranteed things in life.
Right.
Right.
And but we get to choose on, what if we want to postpone it or we want to take an early flight.
That's interesting. I mean, we all know that we all have round trip tickets, but when you put it that way, it's just so.
Right. Because how
Humorous.
many times have we
Yeah.
been on vacation and someone like, oh, don't we wish we could change it? Well, there's a storm coming.
Yeah.
We want to change our flight back or something
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
And with early exits and things like that, the child or all of us can make that decision
Yeah.
that they're going to do that, and that's on the not the soul plan level, but the life plan level.
Yeah.
But it works with the soul plan because the child was here only for a limited amount of time to do certain goals. And if they don't take that plan, that particular exit, there's going to be another one right down the road,
Yeah.
right down the line, or soon afterwards. So
Well, it depends. If I've seen that there are gaps when you don't take, an exit point. There can be gaps in which, in my case, I didn't take an exit point at the same time as my son, and there are gaps, a big gap. But it was because I asked Spirit to be able to do worthwhile things. If I could do that, then I would stay for the aggravation that I get.
well, that's another thing. That's all figured out when they do an early exit, how it's going to affect the people around them. And it gives them the opportunity to help others, it gives them opportunities to help others and things like that. The big word is opportunities,
Right.
because sometimes
Yeah.
we don't take those opportunities.
It's a choice.
It's a choice in life. So that's why some people, after a child passes, they help other people.
Right.
They reach out to people that might be sensitive, or like, let's say the suicide prevention, if that's the case, or maybe Mothers Against Drunk Driving. They try to help. And so something does come out good for them, an opportunity of healing.
Yeah.
Okay. The child's healed. He doesn't need, they're all set. It's here that they feel our pain.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but you're right, an exit point can be a decade later.
Yeah.
But a lot of times when a child passes, they might pass, at an early age.
Yeah.
So that it seems shorter.
Yeah.
Right. I've heard stories about people that have passed, and it was shared later with people, from the other side, that basically, if they hadn't passed now, it's just going to be another month or two before
Right.
it's time for that exit to come about.
Right. Or a similar situation. Because some people might say, well, why do they have to go that particular way?
Yeah.
Well, they could have gone another way, but it didn't, because they, when they decide all this on that soul level and life plan level, there's so many dynamics and levels to it, because they want to see how it's going to affect people around them. They are involved with other people with free will. So if there, let's say, 2 or 3 people involved in this passing, all those souls and those spirits have to interact to see how it's going to play out.
Yeah.
So it's more complex.
If just one person gets frozen after a death, it can change all of the outcomes for everyone.
So, yeah, if someone here becomes locked into their emotions, they have the opportunities, but they lose the opportunities to help other people that would have been in their life plan.
And sometimes you missed that opportunity.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
I was going to say that. As adults, we look back and we're like, wow, that was a close call.
Yeah.
And that other time was a close call.
Right.
And they were probably exit points we decided not to take. We decided to move forward.
Right.
But one thing, too, I want to say to the parents is, we talk about guilt. I talk about guilt in the book. And they don't want you, they want you to release the guilt. The guilt holds back healing, and it holds back opportunities for your own life plans. Okay? And the opportunities to help other people
see that,
so
yeah.
that they can learn.
Right.
Yeah.
There is no way anything you could have done affects the transition of your child. Even if you're involved, you have a part of the plan to come into this, bring the child into the earth plane. But they decide, and the people involved on a soul level decide how they're going to transition out.
Right.
Just because you're a parent doesn't mean that you have control over that.
No.
Even if you're in the car and you're part of the problem or part of the situation,
Yeah.
no guilt, because it's above your pay grade.
Right. You're just an actor.
You're an actor.
Above your pay grade. I love that.
It is. You're a parent,
Yeah.
but on that particular thing,
Right.
the child is above you.
If you step back from the emotion and step back,
From the perspective.
right, and you're able to look down on it, you realize that, well, yeah, that's what we agreed upon.
Yeah.
It's the parent looks. It's my job to protect the child, and to a certain extent, it
Yes.
is your job because you want to make those lessons that they don't have to keep repeating
Right.
same lessons and stuff, so that they can move on with their life and things. But when it comes to transition, no, it's not in your job. It's not in your soul application
No.
for anyone to do that because you don't. You're taking the parent, physical parent level over the child, but the child, you got to remember the child's that individual spirit, and at that point, their development might be way ahead of you.
That's right, but you're still looking at a child.
Right, but now that when if you pull back from what we can see,
right,
the parent is actually the child.
right, that's right.
That's true. We're being taught a lot of times by our
Right,
children.
Right, because
Things we need to learn.
and that child is much more advanced, and so they want you
And
to
that
get
could
rid
have
of
been
the
a
guilt.
contract. I mean, the child was here coming through just to, put the child, put the parents in positions that they were going to have to learn to deal with the situation themselves or learn from that situation.
Or to create new opportunities that they can help and grow from. It's very difficult to say that to a parent that's lost a child, but it's the dynamics of knowing that that child had more control than you will ever understand on this plane
Yeah,
about the transition.
right.
It's much more complex.
Yeah.
And so they
On
don't
the soul level.
Right, so they don't want the parents or the adult to have that guilt that can destroy them
Yeah.
and the opportunities that they will have down the line, and like you said, it'll affect everyone that they come into contact with.
I started studying some Buddhism, and I recently came across the concept of bodhicitta, which means awakened heart. It means when there's a tragedy, feeling the tragedy, feeling the emotions instead of trying to block them off, and then allowing your heart to break wide open, literally broken-hearted, and feel the outpouring of compassion and love that comes from spirit and that comes from within ourselves, like people did after 9/11 and other tragedies.
It's very important to practice self-love, and what guilt does, it cuts that off. Because you're part of spirit and you're part of love, the loving connection and stuff. And a lot of times we put ourselves into guilt prison, and we're the judge, jury, and executioner.
Sure.
And it's a repeating pattern that gets involved with our physiological bodies. So we get into that thinking pattern and our hormones, and all sorts of things are creating havoc in our bodies. And what that happens, all of a sudden you get into a situation where you disconnect from your soul and from the love coming from the other side, and now you really have a problem, because now you're letting your humanness, your brain, your emotions direct your actions. And this is when we see suicide start to take effect, because you don't have those tools that you have, that you came to this plane with, to access, because you've shut them all off.
Block them.
You've blocked them all off, and what happens is your mind is trying to run the whole situation. And we're just, our physical bodies are enough to get us through the physical of the earth and stuff.
Barely.
Barely, exactly. So the last thing is we want to put us in control of this event or this what's happening around us on a spiritual level that's really much deeper. Like a lot of times you see people that go through such tragedies, especially a lot of old timers, and they do pretty well because they say, oh, I just let go and let God. Mm-hmm. I mean, they kind of get it, that they don't have control over the situation. They're like, and they release it, and they allow the healing.
If it's large, they feel they would have been overpowered. There's no way they could have done something to prevent it.
Right.
But when it's on a very close level, where you see a child is suffering, like Justin, from depression, and the next thing you know, he's tried a drug and he died from it.
Right.
And he'd never done drugs before.
Right.
But he chose that, I think, to teach others to stay away from drugs.
ண்ட் I mean, that's a perfect example of he had an opportunity on the life plan to accept that particular way of transitioning because he knows he could affect other people greatly on this level. I mean, a lot of people when they
it was a shock to everybody because they knew he didn't take drugs.
Sure.
So it was.
And a lot of times with people, I mean, another subject I talk about in the book because it has to be is violence and murder and things like that. The children that are involved in that, when they get to the other side, they're like rock stars.
Yeah.
Because they have created such emotional ripples of outpouring of love and compassion that it reverberates on the other side too. So they become almost like master teachers on the other side and create and help and teach other people to deal with people on our side that are shut off. Because our perception is very limited, obviously.
Of course.
To get to the other side, we can see the bigger picture a little bit more.
Sure.
So they actually become, if they do decide to come back, many times they come back as healthcare workers, counselors, doctors, first responders.
Right.
People with a lot of compassion and have a lot of courage. So it's really amazing that these type of souls that cross under those violent circumstances are very advanced. They take huge jumps in their development.
Right.
But they're like rock stars.
So, I mean, if you look at it from the point of view, just like looking at, a radio dial where you have all these radio stations you can listen to, and basically we're just living in one radio station. That's our frequency that we're resonating to.
And the rest of everything else is just gibberish.
And it's heavy metal. Forgive me if you like heavy metal.
But the thing is that, I mean, we can look at it, help from the other side as a little different frequency, or finding a place that if we were to meditate, we can shift to another frequency, or even just taking a drug or alcohol or something like that. Again, you're unconsciously looking for a different vibration.
Right.
A different frequency to resonate to.
Yeah.
Right.
And it could be uppers or downers or whatever, but the thing is that you're just looking for something different because something doesn't feel right here. And again, like you were saying before, if you just let go.
If you let go, because we come with these natural built-in abilities to help us sustain us through our life. Like laughter is a natural ability for healing and in compassion and love.
There's one exception. If we don't ask for help, some things we can't do on our own.
That's right.
Some things we have to do in
we have to be open
coordination
to
with
it.
others.
Right.
We have to have
But
people in our lives.
It's not just being open to it. I agree with what she's saying. So you have to ask.
Right, because you know what happens is these natural tools we have, if we start to shut them down, they're fed by the other side.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So they might put a funny situation around us,
right.
And then we have the opportunity to use that tool that we have to bring laughter or something, on a certain level.
We have 5 minutes. Can we tell the story just briefly about Justin coming in?
Oh yeah.
He had an annoying little person who rode with him.
Well, who's Justin? Just so
my son.
I know. So the
I was
audience.
we were doing a billet service at a church one time, which means people put a piece of paper in a basket, and then anonymously you pick out the piece of paper, and it's got a symbol on it, so we don't know there's any names or who it belongs to.
Gotcha.
So there's a bunch of us, and I pulled one out, and then my turn came up. And I felt like Josie's son was there. So I stood up and I said, Josie, I think this is your son. I get a feeling that it's a young man and he's here for you. And he's saying, I love you. And Josie said, well, thank you. Well, yeah, it's probably Justin, thank you. I said, but he's talking really, really fast. And she said, that's Justin, because he always talk really. She said, just tell him to slow down and you'll be able to understand it better. The next thing I hear Justin say is, I love you. And then Jim, who's Josie's partner, in the congregation, he jumps up and he says, that's him, that's him.
Yeah.
Because he loved the character from Taxi, Jim Gutowski.
Yes, right.
And it's a classic, one of the classic scenes was when he was taking his driver's license.
Yes.
What does the yellow light mean?
What does the yellow light mean?
Yeah.
And
Go
it was,
slow.
Yeah, it was slow down. And it was like, and so Jim was like, slow down. So he used to do this all the time. So when it was a perfect thing. I laughed. I didn't know what was going on.
Right.
But when Jim said that was Justin making fun of the character from Taxi.
That's right.
Yeah.
I love you. It was perfect.
And he was having he liked his existence up there,
Oh, good.
you know.
Well,
He works with young people up there.
When they get to the other side after a suicide, they see what, the bigger perspective. Because when you're down here and you get into that suicidal state and stuff, you shut down, you put the blinders on, and you don't realize there's certain access and help out there.
I can see
because
exactly
your
what
human
you're
body
saying.
is now running the show. Right. You're separated. Your human body's making all the decisions, and
Right.
we don't have the knowledge to make those decisions.
Yeah.
We only have 1 minute. We're going to have you back.
Okay.
To repeat, where can we find your book? On Amazon?
You can find them on Amazon. You can find it on my website,
And the title?
joehiggins.com. And the title is Always Connected for Those Who Have Lost Children.
Okay.
Excellent.
Yep, joehiggins.com. And I'll be back.
Remember, just go with your heart, and things will work.
Give yourself a break.
Right.
Yeah.
And ask for help.
And ask for help.
That's right.
Between those
I
two,
find that so amazing, the response you get when you do ask.
Open your heart to receive love from the other side.
Yeah.
And they'll pour it in.
Right. That's right.
and some of it will come right up through yourself.
Well, yeah,
Right.
you can actually feel the power coming through your body.
Right.
You can actually feel the power.
Right. Because they can feel it on the other side, and they want you to be not as
Shut down.
shut down
Absolutely.
and closed off.
Right.
To love and God.
Right. Well, that's great, Joe. Thank you very much. It was
Okay.
very enlightening.
We have
Thank you.
1 minute. I think we've said all of the just remember things, but let's go over them again.
I forgot.
Ask.
Ask for help.
Ask for help.
Open up your heart.
Open up for your heart.
Yep.
Even if it's brokenhearted.
Yep.
When it's brokenhearted, it's open to receive.
To receive love from the other side and from this side.
Right.
Yes.
Give yourself a break. Try to let go of the guilt, because that's just you.
Oh, and
You don't
one
have any
thing we
control over
talked
that.
about is there's no schedule as to how long it takes to grieve.
Right.
You don't get over. 17 years it's with my son.
Yep, we'll talk
and
about that
he's still
on,
with
on
me.
another show, because we'll talk about relationships.
Great.
Because everyone grieves differently.
Right.
Yeah.
So we'll cover
Excellent.
that.
Very good.
Thank you. Good night. Thank you for joining us. Good night. And come back again to Psychic Holistic Spotlight.
All right. Very good. Well, I think that was